Hi, I'm Heath. Welcome to this episode of Will It Work with vMix, and today we're going to be looking at the OBSBOT Tiny 3. In fact, we're going to look at a few of the OBSBOT devices, but we will focus specifically on the Tiny 3, which is a webcam with PTZ controls, or pan, tilt, and zoom controls. This can all be controlled in vMix, so just as a bit of a sneaky hint, yes, it will work with vMix. All right, let's get stuck into it. OBSBOT have the Tiny 3, but also have the Tiny 3 Lite, which has a smaller sensor. So it is a cheaper camera. We're going to be focusing on the Tiny 3 today, which has that 1.28 inch sensor. It's also got 4K 30 support, and interestingly, it has 1080p 120 support. But you can learn all about the camera on the OBSBOT website. Instead, why don't we just add it into vMix to see what we can do with it here. The first thing we're going to do is plug it in. So I've got a USB cable here, and I've got a laptop that I'm plugging it into. I'm using the USB cable that came with the device. Now, the device is flashing blue at the moment as it sets itself up, and as soon as it turns green, I know that it's available for me to use. There we go. From here, I simply click on Add Input, go to Camera, select from the camera drop-down the OBSBOT Tiny 3 Stream Camera MF, set up a resolution. Today I'm going to set it to 4K Ultra HD, and I'm going to set the frame rate to 29.97. I'll leave the video format as default and click OK. All right, here's my camera, and you can see that it is coming in nicely, but I don't have any audio, and that is because we need to add the audio for these cameras separately. So we'll go back to Add Input, we'll click on Audio Input, and find the OBSBOT Tiny 3 microphone. I'll mute it in my headphones and click OK. Muting in headphones is useful to make sure that you don't hear the audio that you're speaking into your microphones. It can reduce feedback, and it can also make it a lot easier to talk if you're the one listening to your production and talking at the same time. All right, let's have a look at the settings for this microphone input. Here you can see that the audio has come in on, and if I go to the settings, under the General tab, I've got automatically mix audio, and that is currently turned off, which means my audio will stay on permanently if I want it to. However, if I tick this, it will now follow the input. And by that, I mean, if the audio is in output like this, the audio will be on, and if it's not in output, like this, then the audio has automatically muted. As you can see right here, it's now off, and the audio bars are blue. Now, to tie that to my camera, if that's what I want to do, I can go to the camera settings, go to Layers, and add the microphone as a layer to my camera. Closing this, the audio will now follow my camera. So what that means is every time the camera is in output, the audio will turn on for me, which is how I'd like it to be set up for this particular show. Okay, with all of those things set up, now it's time to have a look at the PTZ, or pan, tilt, and zoom controls. So if we go to the settings again for our camera input, and we go down to PTZ, here we've got a menu of different protocols that can be used to control a PTZ camera. For these webcams, we have to select UVC PTZ. Clicking this and then clicking Connect, we will have access to the camera. I'll show you now. We can hold down up and side to side. We can also store locations. So I can create an input right here, and that has saved a particular position for the camera. Now, if I set up a second one and this time use the zoom, so I'll zoom in onto my face, and I can create another input there, I now have the ability to toggle between these two particular views. I'll show you what that looks like now. What we've got here are two virtual inputs, and I can toggle between them. So clicking on this one, the camera moves to that position, and then clicking on the other, the camera moves to that position. So that's a really handy way to allow you to move from one scene to another or one camera view to another smoothly without having to manually move the camera yourself and do those micro adjustments. Instead, it's going to move from one to the other automatically, and you know that those shots will be right. Now, one of the benefits of bringing this camera in at 4K like I did is that it allows me to zoom 2 times and not lose any quality in a 1080p production. So this is a 1080p preset that I'm using, as you can see down here, and zooming from the 4K shot right into a 1080p shot should have no quality degradation in your production. Now, the other resolution and frame rate that I want to look at with this camera is 1080p 120. So we're going to close this camera down and we're going to go back to add input, click on camera, select the camera again, change the resolution to 1920 by 1080, set the frame rate to 120p, and click OK. So now my camera is coming in at 120 frames per second, which allows me to capture the footage and play it back in slow motion and have smooth footage still. So for example, I could capture in 120p, but play back in 30 or maybe even 15 and it would still look reasonably smooth. Now this is useful for things where we want to capture fast motion. For a webcam, that might be a little bit more limited compared to a large camera for a sporting venue, but things like capturing gaming controller play could be really interesting played back in slow motion to see how quickly people are reacting to different things. Another benefit of the high frame rate is that the camera's built-in subject tracking will track at a higher frame rate, and so you get much faster tracking. So let's take advantage of this 120 frames per second by capturing my hand actions, holding the controller, and then slowing them right down in instant replay in vMix. So we're going to go to add input. We're going to click on instant replay. We're going to set up a new instant replay session by clicking on browse. We'll create a new folder called replay. We'll select that folder. We'll set the frame rate of capture up to 120p. We'll add our camera. Here it is. And we'll click on OK. All right, we've now added our instant replay session. I will now just manipulate the camera a little bit. So we'll go back to those UVC controls and we'll lower the camera right down to look at my controller. Okay, now we'll start recording and I'm just going to move my hands nice and quickly and capture that replay. All right, let's play it back and see what we've got. So here you can see that I can slow it right down despite the fact that I was moving incredibly fast. Okay, we'll stop there and now let's have a look at the OBSBOT Center software, which can be freely downloaded from the OBSBOT website and gives you some features that you can tweak to make things work much better in vMix. So we're going to minimize vMix. We're going to open up the software, wait for it to connect. And once it's connected, here you can see some of the settings. The first section that I'd like to show you is under the console, and it's all of the AI tracking capabilities of the camera. Here you can adjust all sorts of things to do with automatically tracking bodies or subjects with the camera. Now, all of these features will just work in vMix, so you can manipulate these to your heart's content, and the camera will just feed that output to vMix. The other thing that I'd like to show you is the image settings, and this is probably more important, especially for high frame rate capture. So having a look at the auto exposure, if I turn this off, I get to see the shutter speed that is being set. And for high frame rates, sometimes you need a faster shutter speed, which means bringing this dial back this way. So you might need 1/800 if you want to capture really fast moving subjects. And as a result, you may need to adjust your ISO up to make it brighter so that you can actually see your subject. The other thing to look at is the white balance. By default, this looked quite good for us, so we have left it as is. And then finally, down the bottom is your contrast, saturation, sharpness, and hue. Now, I did have to lower the contrast in order to get an image that I was happy with, so that's what I've done there. Okay, so I thought I'd just quickly show you all of the OBSBOT devices that we have tested successfully in vMix. So here we've got the Tiny range going from this side here with the new Tiny 3 and Tiny 3 Lite behind it, and on this side here, the Tiny 2 and Tiny 2 Lite behind it. So that's the range there, and you can actually see the size difference of those cameras and how much smaller the new range is. In addition, there is the tail range. So here, vMix also supports both of the tail devices. You've got the Tail Air, which is this smaller device that's a little bit older, and the Tail 2, which is the newer and more premium option. Both of these are USB cameras, just like these ones here, but they are also network capable. So they can be connected over the network using protocols like SRT and NDI. In addition, the Tail 2 has an SDI output and a full-size HDMI output versus the Tail Air that only has a small HDMI micro output. So you will need an adapter to connect this. One of the really unique things about these devices is they both have built-in batteries, so they have the ability to be used completely wirelessly if that is an application that you need. All right, let's have a look at how you might connect this device using NDI. So the very first thing we're going to do is plug it into an Ethernet port, and the good thing about this Ethernet port is it has power over Ethernet coming through, which will in fact power the camera and allow us to use the camera with power over the Ethernet with no power cables and no other cables. We just get power and NDI all at once. All right, let's turn the camera on. There's a button on the back. I'm holding down the power button. It's now lighting up. You can see that it's turning blue and it's initializing itself. So back in vMix, we simply click on Add Input, and instead of going to Camera, we go to NDI OMT Desktop Capture. From here, we're given a list of devices that are on the network that use those protocols. Scrolling to the bottom, I can see the Tail 2 right here, so I'll click on it and click OK. And there we go, we're bringing our camera in, and because it's not a webcam, but it is NDI connected, the PTZ controls are a tiny bit different in that when we go to the settings and we go down to PTZ, it's now using Sony Visca over IP, and it will select that by default because vMix is recognizing it's available. So we simply click connect and away we go. There we are, we now have our controls, just like we would with other ones. The other benefit of this camera is, as you can see in my other camera here, when this is in output, I have a red light on top. And if I cut away and put it in preview, it turns green saying that it's in preview. This is called a tally light, and it's designed for multiple camera productions so that the talent knows which camera to look at. All right, I'm going to get it out of the way and let's wrap this up. So thank you very much for watching. If you do have questions, please check out our documentation on our website. You can find all of the cameras that have PTZ support in vMix by heading to this site right here. And if you want to get in touch with us with any other questions, head to the support tab. Lastly, if you're still wondering about vMix, make sure that you download our free 60-day trial of vMix Pro. It has all of the features and no watermarks, and will allow you to try vMix for a full 60 days without any limits. Well, that's it for Will It Work with vMix OBSBOT Edition. Hopefully you found it helpful, and if you were thinking about using some of these cameras, now you've got some confidence to know that they will indeed work with vMix. I am particularly interested in the 120 frames per second cameras, and I'd love to see what you guys achieve with them, so please reach out if you do come up with productions that use the 120 frames per second. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.